Pure energy. Pure energy.
Here we go. Here we go. All right, probably the boringest part of this video. We're going to talk how to size the battery for the components that you're interested in installing on your kayak. The question's already been asked on Facebook, and we had a small discussion about it. A few people were online. Of course, you get Facebooked whenever you ask a question on Facebook, and it's kind of akin to digging through a garbage can. You're just going to get a bunch of garbage. And immediately people were pounding this guy with, oh, get this battery, get that battery, get this battery, get that battery. Look, the guy just asked what size battery he needs. You don't need to pound him with all your recommendations. So how do you figure out what size battery you actually need for all these gadgets, doodads, and what's-its and who's-its that you're going to install in your kayak? Number one, look up the manufacturer specs, okay? Because the manufacturer specs are going to tell you exactly what the amp draw is while that item's in use. For instance,
a 30-pound thrust motor.
Okay, 30-pound thrust trolling motor. Very simple, very easy. A lot of times they only have, a few speeds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. All right, so whenever that sucker is at full throttle, consider it to be 30 amps. Easy enough, right? Pretty simple conversion there. Your trolling motor is operating at 30 amps, and your battery, let's say it is a 30 amp battery, amp hour battery. 30 amps, 30 amp hours. That means you can operate that motor at full thrust for exactly 1 hour. You're going to drain that battery. The good news is most people are not going to operate that motor at full thrust for an entire duration of 1 hour. So there's a scale at which that motor draws energy. And the manufacturer does have that available, that information available. Typically it's going to be anywhere from like 12 amps all the way up to 30, and it's going to be on a curve. Now, what about your fish finder and your lights and these other things that you want to power up? Maybe a micro power pole. Well, guess what? Those things are only going to draw minimal amounts of current. A fish finder is anywhere from 400 milliamps all the way up to maybe 1.5 amps. LED lights are going to be anywhere from a half amp all the way up to a full amp. Your power pole is going to be bursts of energy, so it might take a lot of power to get that pole up and down, and especially if it's stuck, it's going to draw more amperage, but it might, like the maximum might be 15 amps, and it's just going to be a burst, okay? So when we're talking, what size battery is required, just think of it this way: the bigger the better. It really is that simple. If you can afford a 100 amp hour battery, 12 volt, 100 amp hours, you're better off buying that than a 50 amp hour battery. If you can't, a 50 amp is going to do the job, but will you have headroom? And what I mean by headroom is the ability to possibly go beyond what you expected out of your electronics. That headroom is also referred to as what we need in case of emergencies, right? When you start moving into items that are running on a 24 volt system, yes, you will probably need to run 2 batteries in series in order to get 24 volts. They do have some 24 volt batteries out there. They run about $1,700. They're very expensive. I would actually suggest running 2 50 amp hour batteries in series. That's going to give you 24 volts at 50 amps. Okay, if you run them in parallel, you're not going to get 24 volts. You're going to get 12 volts. You're going to get 100 amps. You got that? All right. There are techniques and ways in order to step up your voltage on a 12 volt battery, but that's going to reduce your available current by 50%. If you were stepping it up to 24 volts using, let's say, a regulator or a step-up transformer. That's not a good idea, in my opinion. that's going to generate more heat. It's going to generate more problems. The equipment's not necessarily matched. Go ahead and spend your time and money and efforts on matching your equipment. And that is one thing, guys, that makes FPV Power such an interesting buy. And we're going to talk about that in part 3. See ya. Ooh. I forgot. Almost forgot because I remembered. So I didn't necessarily forget, but I almost forgot. Sometimes you'll run into an instance where a motor is rated in watts instead of amps. And there is a conversion for that. Generally speaking, it's like if you have 1,000 watts, it's going to be somewhere around like 87 or 870 amps. 87. Something like that. I can look it up and we can find that out. But don't be discouraged whenever you start running into that issue. Just go ahead and look up the conversion. You get the data and apply it. Apply it to your situation and how you're going to use the item and what type of battery that you need. It's really easy, folks. It's not difficult. This is not rocket science. It's rocket science.